a lot of these ideas that we've seen were very storytelling driven, which is kind of refreshing to see.
It's quite disruptive. It's making coding cool.
There's a little bit of shock value in it as well. It's just opening that door to see what's on the other side.
What you're left with is the pieces that really were creative, but they use that platform in a really great way.
Hello and welcome to the D&AD Jury Insights digital panel. My name's Amah-Rose. I'm a journalist specialising in arts and culture, and I am joined by three special guests. I'm joined by Kabza Moshapalo, who's Chief Creative Officer at Ogilvy, Johannesburg, Raymond Otene McKay, who is Chief Creative Officer at Run, Jung, who is Global Creative Director at Cheil worldwide. And we're going to be talking about their picks for the winners, I guess, of digital this year. And then we're going to spread out into a larger discussion. But essentially what we're going to do first is run through their favourite. And I wanted to start with you, Kabza, first, if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Wonderful. And the work you've chosen is GWC DojaCode from Mojo Supermarket. And just finding out a little bit about this work, it's easy to see why you thought it was groundbreaking on several different levels. I wanted to ask you, what stood out to you initially about this project above all the others?
Girls Who Code wants to inspire the next generation of female coders. DojaCode! So, when Doja Cat released a viral song about powerful women, we used it to empower the next generation of them. That's right, the first ever codable music video. An interactive experience that's secretly a coding lesson. Using snippets of code, girls could change the story. We turned $0 media dollars into $10 million of eyeballs. And girls everywhere spent millions of minutes learning to code, without even realizing it. Instead of consuming the internet, girls were creating it. All by turning the world's hottest music video into the coolest coding class to ever exist.
I think, we have a lot of initiatives or ideas that, try to address the same sort of thing around women empowerment. I felt this piece was quite succinct in terms of fit for purpose, looking at an iconic superstar and the behavior that the audience has around her and her music, which is, viewing her music videos as well as viewing her and her makeup tutorials live. I think GWC found an interesting way to, find a way to be attractive to them around what they do, which is making coding cool. By making it very, very seamless, removing the barrier of you think code, you think it's difficult, you think you have to have a bit of that you have to be trained to actually understand how to do that. But it just really is quite seamless. It's quite intuitive in terms of how they can actually participate in something that they already do, which is watching the video. But now they've given a lower sense of control by changing how it plays out. And and it's taking something that's quite a frivolous sort of action and makes it quite empowering, which I think was quite powerful in terms of the idea and thinking and a real brand fit.
Absolutely. And I thought it's almost like a choose your own adventure, but with code. Could you talk us through how it works in practice for those participating? So
in practice, there's a website platform that the music video has been uploaded to. There's two versions. There's one that is on YouTube that's your normal video, and then there's one that's titled DojaCode. The one that's titled DojaCode, as it plays, there's points in the actual music video that you can actually change aspects of it. So part of the story, part of how she looks. For example, you can choose the nail color of, just typing in the actual color of what you want or what you want to see. As you become more familiar with coding and how CSS works, you can actually even put hexadecimal values, and that's already like training you and equipping you with how coding actually works. And it's quite a seamless sort of experience that, you as a young girl who's just interested into the music video, and you almost now tricked into learning how to code in a manner of speaking. I think it's quite refreshing. It's quite disruptive in terms of how it's making coding cool.
Exactly. And I think in a way, a lot of I remember looking at music videos and looking at performers especially, and just thinking, how did they do that? And it's all built around this kind of intangible magic X factor, which is exciting in itself. But this kind of, as you say, is incredibly empowering for young women, because and for anyone who wants to participate, because it's just like, here's how you do this in a really simple way. And that must be so exciting for someone who's either looking to get into video or looking to get into coding.
Yeah, it just broadens your horizon. You just think of, there's so many other aspects to this that you would never consider before. And now it's just opened up your perspective on what's possible.
And what do you think the impact of this work could be for kind of similar projects? Do you think this is something that would catch on? Do you think it's something that people could use as a teaching tool?
Possibly. I think a lot of the times, and why I think this is not a unique thing. I think this has been done before, but it has been done to an audience that's already bought into this level of thinking. But now it's attracting young girls who would never actually consider this before, So I think for me, that's the neat part of it, that things like these have been done before, where it's actually more people that are already, inclined to do coding. So it's already like an audience that's already bought into this. Now, getting someone that never considered it at all, I think that's the neat trick here.
Absolutely. It's really, really interesting.
And that's quite impactful, because in this way, I think, there is quite a low percentage of females taking up this trade. So it's becoming more attractive to them.
Absolutely. And but that can only be a good thing in terms of representation within digital, I think. But thanks so much for explaining that to us. And let's move on, because we don't want to run out of time. Raymond, you've chosen the Unfiltered History Tour, which is fascinating. But this is by Dentsu Web Chutney. Could you talk us through this entrance, please?
You are now viewing the Greagle Shield. Captain James Cook was a British event.
We're now looking at the Greagle Shield, which was taken from my people. Collections in the British museums are premised on a simple idea. I'm proud of what my grandfather stole from yours.
Yeah, this one resonated with me quite a lot because it's told from the perspective of the communities where these pieces of artifacts, these artifacts have been taken from those countries. And the first artifact that we see on the case study was one of the First Nations in Australia. And being Māori and being an Indigenous to Aotearoa, New Zealand, that's something that really resonated from a perspective where these underlying stories are being told about these things that we would see all the time in museums all around the world. And to be able to, I guess, be told in a way where, people have access to it, either inside the museum or outside of the museum. It's quite a cheeky way to gift, basically, knowledge, to then be able to tell the true story and the other side of the story, because we only hear one side of the story. Yeah. And so, being that it's quite close to my heart from that perspective, it was pretty powerful, and I kept on popping up and I kept on saying, I was like, oh, God, I love that piece of work. It's so good. God, it's that feeling as a creative. You're like, oh man, I wish I had done that piece, right? It's that feeling. So,
because it's been a huge debate, hasn't it? And the British Museum has been the epicenter of it. I mean, there are a lot of looted objects in museums around the world, mainly in the West, of course, because they were the people who did most of the looting. But so we have these objects in museums that are now owned by these museums. And there's lots of questions over where they should be. Should they be returned? Do people want them? Should we return the looted objects and keep things that have been bought on the market? Where did those bought items come from? And in a way, people have got out of solving it by raising problems like all of those questions. And it's, in a way, it's like where the objects end up, time will tell, you know, but as you say, it's access to these histories, which is so important. And rather than waiting for the museums to go through all their processes, talk to governments, change the labels, this is just actually a really clever way, because anyone can walk into the museum, British Museum, it's free, and hold up their phone and get another story about these objects.
Yeah, it's again that there's a little bit of shock value in it as well, because it's just opening that door to see what's on the other side. And I think that's really special, because I think once you have the full picture, you know, if you're talking about reparation for these types of things, you know, through history, to have all the knowledge for everyone to be able to go forward is super important. I know that being Māori here in New Zealand, that's what's kind of happening now. We're starting to acknowledge, you know, the tangata whenua, with the people of the land here, and and kind of starting to slowly, I guess, acknowledge the treaty that was signed here, and the tangata tiriti, which is the people who came here, and we had that mergence of the two people. So really, really special piece. And like I said, just a cheeky way to give people that information. I'm typical old school creative. I haven't got too much provenance in the digital world, but obviously, you know, just bringing that into the fold using technology is pretty brilliant.
Absolutely, and it's a really clever use of augmented reality, which I think has been hanging in the background for a while and is now coming into the mainstream.
Absolutely, and I think you made a point with Kabza as well, in terms of, you know, what does it look like in the future. Well, I can see the same sorts of things happening with these digital tools that we have access to be able to you know, right wrongs, bring access. You know, this whole sort of idea of NFTs within the museum and art gallery space, being able to, you know, take these digital images, and, you know, maybe there's a conversation there between museums and those communities where those objects and artifacts have been taken from. So that's quite interesting as well. So
exactly, fascinating. And what do you think? I mean, it's quite clear, but could you talk me through what you think is game changing about this work?
I think for me, I'm always going to access my Indigenous kind of perspective. So for me, this is hugely game changing. It's not a comfortable conversation to be had. And so what I mean by that is that, being an Indigenous creative, which I actually don't see many of us in the world, it's nice to know that this kind of conversation, really hard conversation, is able to be had. And it may not have been by an Indigenous person, but it's obviously by someone who's super open-minded. And that's where I think the core for me was. You know, I think creativity for me is, you have to access all sort of elements of creativity. And I think you have to put human emotion in there. And if it makes you feel something, gosh, it's got to be creative, you know, so.
Absolutely. And do you think this could have a wider impact in the museum world, in terms of restitution, also just in terms of sharing these stories?
Yes. Yes. To answer that question, absolutely yes. I think, you know, that technology, while it's not a new technology, and as Kabza mentioned as well, you know, it's just how you twist the use of that technology. And I think it was a brilliant way to do that. You know, maybe it obviously won't be as stealth as it was for that piece of work. But, you know, it's again, just that conversation that's able to be had.
Absolutely. And it takes out the waiting for the institution, and it kind of puts pressure on the institution to catch up with the conversation, which is
absolutely
power switch.
Absolutely. You said it there, power switch.
Wonderful. And Jax, I wanted to now come to you to hear all about Sick Beats, and this is by Area 23.
Yes, it's super exciting just to see the range that we all brought, because I know we've had long discussions in that in our Zoom calls, and so I'm quite, it's quite interesting to see. I think I also love DojaCode. I loved Unfiltered History Tour as well. I did bring something a little bit more traditional, but I thought this was something that actually made bigger change in the world, and it was real. So this is something I felt, since day one of judging, this was one of my favorites.
Turn up the volume.
There is a specific sound frequency, 40 hertz, that is proven as effective as traditional CF vest therapy. It loosens mucus so patients can cough it up. The Woojer Sick Beats vest syncs to your smartphone and pulls these frequencies from the music you're listening to, delivering them to the chest in real time. We scanned the millions of songs on Spotify to collect the songs containing the 40 hertz tone and gave the CF community dedicated access to the therapeutic song library.
So Sick Beats was basically the first musically powered airway clearance vest for CF patients. So basically it loosens up the mucus using the beats of a song. And I guess, and it was based around children. And so that's always a nice little story when kids say it. But, it was, they go through this process 2 times a day. With this big kind of bulky vest on, and it just kind of like pounds them until the mucus loosens up. And I think Sick Beats had done it in an interesting way where they were kind of basically the AI would go through your Spotify account and pick up songs that were 40 hertz and over, and then basically that would be your playlist. So the beats would actually activate based on the song, the airway, the music waves, the sound waves of that. So then, it actually turned, this kind of procedure into a positive one. So kids that would have to sit there and just kind of like have this big, bulky, heavy vest on them doing it every day, they had now music to kind of make that experience a little bit more entertaining and fun. So I thought this was quite nice in terms of storytelling, but also, the technology isn't so innovative, but I think the way that they used it for this campaign was, it doesn't work without that, the innovation, the tech. So I thought this was quite, it was a nice kind of piece that really felt, real and honest, and it actually brings good to the world. So yes. Yeah, it's fun.
And it seems like when you watch the video, because obviously you say it's quite an intense process for quite small children, it's very physical, it looks quite painful. When they're wearing the Sick Beats vest, you see them relax, they're enjoying themselves, they're kind of dancing, and it feels like it's a really completely different experience to just wearing the other vest that you see them wear.
Right. So immediately, even in the film, you see them, the before and after. It's like when they're on the couch with they're talking, and it's like, you hear their voice vibrating, and you can tell that it's not an easy experience for them every day. Versus, they have a cool looking vest on now that, is activated by their favorite kind of music. So they're in control of what they want to hear during this procedure. And it's I guess there was over 30 million kind of songs that it actually went through. So there's actually a playlist that it doesn't feel repetitive as well. So it's something that, they can listen to a different song that works for them the next day, so it's something to look forward to, I think, which is the nice kind of story to it.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And as you say, it's taking an existing technology and using it to the benefit in a way that maybe no one's thought of before, which on one hand could be like a sign of progress, a sign of access to technology and us getting used to it in our lives. But also, and so I wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes it good, though. It always means that, it doesn't always have to be the newest thing and you win an award. I think it's how you use it. How does it benefit, for in our case, for kids, it wouldn't exist without that technology. So I think for them, it's the way that they use it, the new way that they improvise that technology that made it cool. So I think that's always a good thing to see, because, you know, it's always about what's the coolest, newest technology that people are doing. And I think we also had this discussion during the panel, is kind of, you know, like, is that the newest tech? Is that tech innovative? And it's like, but, you know, sometimes it doesn't rely on that all the time. So I think the way that they used it was quite amazing, because it's actually, from what I know, it's FDA approved. It's also, there's hospitals like UCLA and CHLA that actually had adapted this treatment. So I think because it makes it so real. And I love it when campaigns don't have a timeline on it. So it's like, you know, you see things, it's like, oh, you know, we made it for this, you know, 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. But it was nice just to see that the timeline on this is still ongoing, and they continue to kind of provide this service so that it makes this treatment less painful, less expensive, less uncomfortable for people who do have the challenge.
Yeah, so it's absolutely kind of amazingly impactful, and as you say, the impact will go on and on. But I wanted to broaden the conversation out now to include all of you, so please pitch in. And I wanted to start by asking you, which plays into something that's come up in all three works, which is this, rather than it being like a hot new tech, this is someone taking an existing tech and doing something surprising with it or innovative with it. And I wanted to ask, there was a kind of rush to digital in the pandemic. There was a lot of kind of big innovating out of need, you know, and I wondered what you thought the impact of that has been on the overall landscape.
Yeah, I think it was really heartfelt for us, because we had to go through loads and loads of entries, because now as an unexpected spike of entries that are like digital or perceived to be digital. And I think that's the nature of how the pandemic affected or accelerated the adoption of it. You know, I think it was on the trajectory to be, you know, more and more spend from key clients is being, you know, digital. But now the pandemic meant that it was accelerated because, you know, you have your captive audience that brands needed to communicate with, create user journeys that connected their brands with them in a different way that's not, you know, physical because of what the pandemic implications were. So so I think it's only going to get more and more of, you know, some of those behaviors being embedded and more campaigns coming out that, you know, are driven through that new way of approaching digital. So I think that's the long-term effect or impact of what the pandemic has done. And you see in a lot of the works where it's overcoming some of those challenges that we had, like contact and access and all those different things. So I think that prevailing theme will carry on, even though we might be not in the clear with the pandemic, but, you know, living with the consequence of it. But, you know, in the future, there's now new ways of brands connecting with the audiences through digital means.
Right. And you could already see, I think, in the range of work that we saw, it's like people were tackling it. Digital is now so broad. You know, you had cases where it was like, does this belong in digital, or do we need a separate gaming category? I mean, use of influencers, you know, it's interesting to see how brands were engaging with TikTok and Instagram. So there was, and then, you know, I expected personally that there'd be more things on the metaverse or NFT, but there was not as many as I thought so when I initially started. So things like that, you could already see that brands are really trying to explore how to engage, especially during the pandemic, how to engage to their the audience who just needed a lot of content at that time. So it really, thanks to that, we had about over 800 pieces to go through. But, you know, it was quite interesting to see the range of work that was submitted.
Yeah, I can I can support that. I think, you saw so many things you had to really sort of sift through to see who was, twisting it enough to be really super cool or really, really different, because there was a lot, but also like beautiful. Like it was funny when judging, I was judging and my wife was in the other, she's my business partner as well. She was in the other room and I was going, oh my gosh, this is so good. So like just reactionary was just funny when I was judging, and I had a great time judging it. So yeah. Interesting.
And as that kind of rush calmed down, slowed down a little bit, I wondered what you thought, now we're getting a chance to kind of digest, what you thought the most significant evolution in digital has been over the last year or so.
I think a lot of, like previously, you'd see like quite evidently, quite clearly that digital was an afterthought, where now it's almost leading. The idea is digitally led, from experience to fulfillment to, all the different touch points along the journey. So I'd say it's more taking center stage, where it's no longer an afterthought, which is very good to see. But I think all those things, again, within the last 2 years, that it's actually taken hold of how things are conceptualized, or how brands brief artwork and the expectation of how to engage their customers.
Also, I think the storytelling aspect is definitely been pushed and became stronger. And I think it's because maybe during the pandemic, there was this need for longer content. And I think a lot of these ideas that we've seen were very storytelling driven, which is kind of refreshing to see, because like Cabello said before, it was almost kind of like you do a main campaign and digital was just kind of the adaptation and the afterthought of that. Whereas now you really see the digital campaign being the main source and the main hub, and there's longer content, there was more stories to tell. So that was kind of the main concept of the projects that we've been seeing. So I thought that was quite interesting to see.
Do you think, in a sense, like with also with creatives and with consumers, do you think there's a sense that people are now just better with digital? They understand it more, it's more assimilated into their lives, and we're kind of seeing that in the creativity around digital?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so correct. It's it's an extension of us now. It's no longer this thing. It's it's our daily lives now. And so I guess to talk or both support both comments. I would say I really love the way that it was brought into the real world, the physical world. So how that manifested as well, not just being on a screen or your mobile or whatever that was just how it was brought into the real world was really, really cool to see. And you saw a lot of it, so yeah.
And I guess I don't know why I keep coming back to this point, so forgive me, but I think it's very interesting this thing that we keep seeing, that keeps coming up in the conversation, which is the fact that rather than it being about hot innovation, that it's about actually personal innovation, creativity. It's like, do you feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, that digital has come back to creativity and slightly away from innovation from tech?
I hope so. I hope so. It's been a few years where we're just like, oh my goodness, we're done. Like creatives are done. Like there's AIs that are going to be doing our jobs, and I think at the end, it's the creativity that kind of what you're left with is the pieces that really were creative, but they use that platform in a good way, in a really great way, So that was really refreshing to kind of see. I think also the pandemic did that as well, because a lot of people were working remotely. So at the end, you wouldn't have been so close to your IT guys and things like that. So it might have been the pandemic that actually also kind of accelerated that a little bit more. But God, I hope we go back to creativity.
And I feel like we're coming to the end of our discussion now, which is thank you so much for your insights. I've really enjoyed speaking to the three of you. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. But I wanted to also ask, is there anything that you wanted to finish on, anything you wanted to add to the conversation before we wrap up?
I mean, just one thing for me. I think what was also really amazing for me was the panel that we had, which was normally it's like a boys' club. It was the most diverse panel that I've been on, where I think there was just me, Raymond, and it was just three guys, and the rest were power ladies. You know, it was really, was really great. You know, and yeah, and incredible conversation and discussions around the work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was fun. It was a lot of work. It was, I think, 800 something, 16 or something like that. So we did have a huge number to go through, but it was refreshing. It was refreshing to kind of see that digital encompassed this broad kind of, and it's probably going to grow even bigger unless, we separate them. But I think it was really nice to kind of see the range of work, inspiring work.
Yeah, cool. I second both of those comments as well. And I feel like just coming round back to the whole idea of creativity was really the winner. And, although we were in the digital category and there was all these new technologies, well, not so new, it was nice to know that there was always the guardians there going, no, we've got to put that creativity hat on. It really dominated how we looked at everything digital, which was fantastic. So, and I just want to say thank you to Kabza and yourself, Jax, as well, and you too, and just being here and having a voice from an Indigenous perspective. And it's been lovely. It's been a lot of manakitanga, meaning enhancing each other, which has been fantastic. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sounds wonderful.